Yeah, you know who it is, and for those of you that don't, I'm Cytonius, the opposite of the Furious. From Speek, Geek, and Limited. And just want to say what's up to everybody, man. Me and the other half of the path, Darius, we recently started doing a series of podcasts for the channel. For those of you that don't know what we do, Speaking Unlimited is pretty much a video essay channel. Darius knocks it out of the park with his Hellboy videos as well as the Spawn lore videos. As someone that works on the channel, I love those videos, especially the Spawn lore videos. But yeah, we're delving into doing podcasts as well, adding that element to the channel. So this particular podcast is titled Speak Geek Versus, where me and Darius and whoever wants to come on and speak their mind about whatever topics in pop culture they feel they have a viewpoint on, can come in and just kind of talk their shit and have a good conversation about it. So this episode is me and Darius discussing one of our favorite franchises, the Avatar franchise, not the James Cameron one, but the Aang and Korra franchise. So hopefully y'all enjoy it, and yeah, check out this episode of Speak Geek versus the Legend of Korra. All right, peace. The idea of something being highbrow or lowbrow is just, it's a matter of your understanding of the text or the medium. Because I look at something like Avatar: The Last Airbender, that's a very highbrow show.
I think that The Legend of Korra is even higher brow.
They're both highbrow.
Yeah.
I think they're both equally potent. And I know you dying to talk about some motherfucking Korra, my dude. Like, I know you, because I be seeing you going to war.
No, because dude, the people who people will literally throw The Legend of Korra under the bus. They'll be like, well, she loses a lot. And I'm like, do you win every day? You don't win every day, do you?
But also,
she's a girl going into womanhood who was raped of her powers. Who, yeah, she didn't always win, but I mean, you're not going to. Especially in a modern world that they were in, compared to no one's Avatar Kyoshi where you're savage 24/7. No one's Aang where you're a child. Like, the Last Airbender is looked at through the lens of youth.
yeah.
The Legend of Korra is looked at through the lens of teenage going into adulthood.
There's also the fact that it's
and the troubles that you face because of that.
There's also a female protagonist, and I
don't think that that's why people were upset.
I think that's a part of it. Because you gotta think about it. It goes back to the whole teenage girl philosophy. Like when something is geared towards teenage girls, it's usually viewed as low entertainment.
Yeah, but The Legend of Korra was geared towards everyone, but it was primarily teenage girls could watch it though. But there was nothing wrong with that though.
But you could make the same argument for like Avatar: The Last Airbender. Like it's geared for little children. No, when that show was on the air, I was like fucking 28, and I still dug it. So it's like, but the actual crux and the aim or the demographic, it was aimed at kids. And I feel like The Legend of Korra, because they can't remake this. I
remember when Nick did a thing on they had a little. It was either Nick or it was some YouTube channel. It might have been Nickelodeon though, who they put Korra in front of a lot of young boys and girls, and they were just like, "Does her being a girl matter to you?" He was like, "No, she's awesome."
No, I agree with that. But what I'm saying is this: it's the perception of the text, not the actual
because
text.
She's the main character.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying.
But I'm like, but there's so, but see that that in and of itself is just weird, because there was nothing that she was going through that no one could, that you didn't relate to, that I didn't relate to. Like,
well, all stories are human stories.
Yeah, but people also didn't like that Korra went from Bolin. Nah, she used Bolin.
But that still falls under the teen female. You know what I'm saying?
But you know what's funny? No one liked that whole dynamic, but they didn't mind Zuko and Mai, and they didn't mind the beach episode with fucking Azula and that one dude. And they don't mind Katara and Aang being together.
But once again,
they don't mind shipping Sokka and Toph.
But Sokka was rocking with everybody. But the thing too, but the thing about the whole like Korra versus this should actually be the whole podcast. The thing about Korra versus Aang is that Aang represents innocence and Korra represents something entirely different. So it's that disconnect of like the general audience that grew up with Avatar: The Last Airbender. They grew. It's all right.
But Korra is literally just snatched. Korra in a way is like, okay, you grew up with The Last Airbender. I gotta say it because I'm here, so we see it. So I don't want to say you grow up with this.
Oh my bad, they can't see it yet. Like I got the whole seasons and shit. Yeah.
But it's kind of like being snatched out of your playpen and being like, all right, now here's real life. Well, you know, because there's just a lot. But I just felt like if you look at the modern context, one, it's a big jump, so people feel jarred by that. And then two, you also then showed all of the original characters grown up, which means in a way you could have had more stories to tell.
Yeah.
Also, you have comic books that are canon that shows them going on more journeys, which means you could have did a season 4 and a season 5 that didn't have to be comics because it showed from the perspective of someone who isn't a part of the industry during that time and in that era. Avatar was one of the biggest things, so no one knows why you couldn't have just kept going. So then for it to go on hiatus, and there are Avatar fans who don't even know that the comic books exist and that they're canon. I've seen it. So it's like, and they ask where to buy the books, which is a whole nother weird question. I don't know why you would ask.
A comic book store.
Or a bookstore, but
where?
Or Amazon.
Oh, that place, yeah.
Or Google to just type it in. But anyway, so then make that jump to Legend of Korra. It's new. It's a completely new character. It's a completely new era. It feels as if there's a disconnect, like you said, from
the kids. Like the kids growing up to like her being a teenager. But hold up, because I want to say this. Another thing that the Legend of Korra had.
Her being promiscuous.
No, it ain't even that. It's the fact that like Korra doesn't have as much charm as Aang. Aang was a very charming character. Korra isn't, because Korra's cocky.
And she's hard-headed.
Yeah, exactly. Don't nobody like no shit like that.
I don't know. I just felt like, why not? Why does every girl have to be perfect?
No, it ain't even that. Because I give you a prime example of somebody that's a hard-headed motherfucking character and is one of the most loved fucking characters in Geek. No. Okay. I'm gonna say Vegeta. Yeah. That's the most hard-headed, stubborn motherfucker in the face of anything. But this is the flip side. Vegeta's a man.
Yeah.
So
but nah, because there are hard-headed characters that are girls that people like.
Like who?
Catwoman is hard-headed.
Catwoman isn't hard-headed. She has agency, and that's a completely different thing.
But also, Korra's a child. Not a child.
She's not a child. She's a teenager.
She's going into her 20s.
At the start of the show, she's like 16.
Yeah, but by the end of the show, she's going into her 20s.
But the crux of the show takes place in her teen years.
Yeah.
And she's a hard-headed female teenager. So you got to think about when.
But she's doing things that. Korra's also doing things that guys do, and I feel like some of that stuff makes certain guys uncomfortable. Because Korra may not have, I guess, agency, but she's in control.
No, she has agency.
She was using people to get to other people to get what she wanted.
She has agency, but it goes back to her being a hard-headed teenage female. And that's something that society shuns because hard-headed, I'm using quotation fingers, and agency, there's a huge disconnect. Like some people, they don't conflate the two because they are very synonymous. And even with the thing with Catwoman has sex appeal. Her character is written with sex appeal plus agency, so her hard-headedness has a charm to it because she's sexy. Korra isn't portrayed as a through the male gaze.
No.
And that's another aspect of the character that's a disconnect. When you have female characters and they aren't presented in the male gaze, that can be problematic for people who are used to seeing women highly sexualized, especially fucking teenage characters in animation.
Man.
You feel me? Like look at a character like Bulma. Bulma has tons of agency. She's more hard-headed than Korra, but people love Bulma.
Yeah.
Because she's sexualized. Korra's a tomboy. So not only is she a teenage female, she's a teenage female tomboy.
She eat like a whole ass dude.
But that's a part of that's a part
of who she is, though.
And
that's why but for me, that's her charm to me. That's why I appreciate her as a character, because she's not Korra isn't perfect. Korra isn't on point when she fights at all. She's completely not a focused person when she tries to meditate. But she still meets people in her life who are like, all right, you don't have to be on point to be good.
Korra is the opposite of a Mary Sue, and I think that's another part of the disconnect, because Mary Sue's can work in either direction. You can be too much of a Mary Sue like Rey in Star Wars, or you can be not enough of a Mary Sue like what Korra is. And the interesting thing is, both of those female characters who both embody very masculine aesthetics, because Rey in Star Wars, she's not dolled up, she's not, walking around with her boobs all flashing. She's very conservative in how she presents her femininity, but that character is not as endearing as Princess Leia, who's a sexualized female character who's also hard-headed. Yeah. So it's like female characters cannot have charm without sex appeal in the eyes of a mainstream audience. And that's what's very problematic about The Legend of Korra. And that's a conversation that many people don't have about Korra. That's the difference between her and Aang. Aang doesn't need to be sexualized because he's a little boy. Moreover, he's a boy. Boys, masculine sex appeal, the female gaze isn't as prominent as the male gaze towards women. So Aang don't got to deal with it, and Katara don't have to deal with that because they're all kids. But you have this teenage female character, and teenage female characters. Dog, I watched a lot of Saved by the Bell. Fucking Kelly Kapowski, highly fucking sexualized. Highly sexualized. You know what I'm saying? All the those episodes of Saved by the Bell, them fucking girls was like 15 to 16 in bathing suits and shit. I bet you if Korra was in a fucking bathing suit, it would be problematic to some, but she would still have more of an endearing resonance with people than what she has now. And that's the problem with Legend of Korra, because I think both shows are written equally well. There are episodes of The Legend of Korra that I think are light years above some episodes of Avatar: The Last Airbender. And his
first episode of season 3, when Zahir shows up.
Dog,
the first time.
The episode with Wan.
Mm-hmm. You know that episode with Wan is
it's classic. That's
classic. That's an instant classic.
That's the best episode in anything that they've ever done. And once again, it goes back to that male. It goes back to we watched the Lindsay Ellis series on Transformers and how she spoke.
Man, when she broke down that Transformers should have been about Michaela, man, I was upset. I was mad. I was like, wow, yup. Because even growing up when that movie came out, so 2007, so I was 13. So
26.
I never saw Michaela as quote unquote
through the male gaze.
I didn't because it's kind of like someone telling you that. I always saw it as someone trying to convince you that a burger was a salad.
Yeah.
It's like, I know what you're doing. Like you're trying to sell me on the sex appeal of it or the sleekness of it. I don't buy it because that's not. I just don't like that. That's weird to me. Like that's all the weird sexual jokes that they were making in that show, in that movie, and I'm like, all right. But then when Lindsay Ellis was like, if you look at the entire first Transformers movie and you realize that it's all of really the person who goes through the much character change is Michaela.
She's also the most capable human being.
The most capable. All the way up to the third movie where she gets replaced by Jason Statham's girlfriend or wife or whatever now, who then is the assistant to a guy who owns this big car manufacturing company or whatever. It's like, damn, that's all. That's all.
She's eye candy, and that's what I'm saying. Like, and another example of the male gaze in the world of comics and geek entertainment, the Batman mythology. You have to think about the most well-remembered characters in the Batman mythology are the most highly sexualized. Look at characters like Cassandra Cain. Look at characters like Spoiler. And it's funny, you would think Spoiler would be sexualized because she had a kid, but she's really not. But when you look at somebody like the Huntress, highly sexualized. Catwoman, highly sexualized. Talia al Ghul, highly sexualized. Cassandra Cain was the most effective physical member of the Bat family. She was able to go toe to toe with motherfucking Batman, with Lady fucking Shiva, and she was a fucking teenage female prodigy. She was also ethnic, but she doesn't have that resonance no more. She ain't really have the resonance back then, because she wasn't walking with her boobs and shit out. She wasn't walking like, here I am, Tim, like, you know, come take me, Tim. But you know who they did that with? They did that shit with Batgirl, especially in that fucking Killing Joke movie when they made her have sex with Batman.
That was so weird.
But it's a part of the male gaze, because what those movies have become, what a lot of those DVD, straight to DVD anime movies have become, they've become a shell of what anime used to be when it first got popular as this underground phenomenon in the early 90s, where it was like, oh man, it's cartoons, but edgy. But the DC movies are trying to capitalize on that, and they're like fucking 25 years too late. And then they don't do it as well as anime, because you have unnecessary cussing, you have just a bunch of unnecessary shit. Like, I don't need Barry Allen to be like, fuck this shit. I don't need that. That's not what, you know what I'm saying? Like, because they don't do that in the comics, and it works. So why the fuck would you put the shit in the movies and try to make it work? And to go back to the whole Korra thing, Korra's still a part of that anti-male gaze. She's an anti-male gaze character that is actually one of the most progressive characters to emerge in animation ever, in my opinion.
No, I mean, she's up there. There's others like her, but I just feel like
in American animation.
Oh, in American, no, hell no, not American.
That's my point. Like in American animation, there's nobody else like Korra.
But with Aang, people talk about Aang like it's a mythic thing.
Exactly.
Like, Aang did this, because they literally, I mean, Aang is a Jesus figure in a lot of ways. I mean, obviously because he's the Avatar, you know.
So is Korra.
Not to get too meta, but it's like, but it's because I think that they see Aang as a character who has no flaws, or the flaws that he does have, they consider that, oh well, that's a part of his character, that's a part of the story and the journey. And I'm like, the Legend of Korra elevates things to a much more mature level in hopes that you can understand why things are happening the way that they are. You're in a modern era. This isn't the era that they were in back then, where things had to be solved not with words.
But
like there isn't the looming threat of the Fire Lord coming to swoop in and destroy. The looming threat now is, how do we deal with the gang members that don't like waterbenders, who also live in the same area that the waterbenders live in? How do we deal with these social issues? How do we deal with these political issues? So then, those are some of the themes that are within the Legend of Korra. So the enemies are extremists. You know, you got Zahir, who's an extremist. I forgot the main character from the villain from season 1.
It was Amon.
I can't believe.
Well, Korra's villains were political, but
But also, Korra just took extra steps that I felt like were needed. For example, when Amon's fucking brother was like, "Yeah, man, you're crazy, and I don't think our family is right, so I'm gonna just kill us both out here." And that last scene where when he's just crying, just like, damn, this nigga about to kill us.
Well, I want to add on to it. I want to add on to something you just said about Aang being like a Jesus figure. I would actually take it one step away from that. I think Aang is more of a Gandhi figure. Okay. And Korra is a Joan of Arc figure. So those parallels are incredibly different. You know what I'm saying? Because you have, for one, this is the interesting thing about Aang. Aang is a character who should be in a position of like high patriarchal power, but he seems to want to run away from it. And I think that's what makes him so endearing, is that he's the antithesis of the Fire Lord, and I think that's why they're good villains. The Fire Lord is a monarch. He wants to consolidate power for his own self-interest. Aang is someone that has incredible power and isn't sure that he is ready for it or if he even wants it. And that makes them interesting opponents. So with Korra, that element is actually lost in the series. Like her villains don't necessarily parallel her interests. because her main interest is to just be the avatar and to get like a boyfriend, and that goes back to the whole teeny, you know what I'm saying, the teeny bop type shit that goes on with it. And I think her character was mishandled in that regard.
But I feel like I don't think it was, because I feel like you have a character like that who then realizes through the characters that she meets, through her own story progression, she realizes that these cannot be the only two things in my mind.
No, exactly. But this the other.
And I'm hit with the most at the time, the most ruthless people who are trying to come for me.
Well, yeah, but also another thing too is the way that the Avatar position is portrayed in The Last Airbender versus The Legend of Korra is the Avatar title in The Last Airbender is mythic. In the Legend of Korra, it's political.
But it's
more of a job because the world changed.
Right, because you're now dealing with a modern era. That's what I mean. Where in the Last Airbender, I keep making the mistake of pointing, but in the Last Airbender, where even if you look at the mindset of people 100 years ago, 200 years ago, completely different. You cannot take a person from 1862, put them here today, and put them in front of a computer and think that they're going to be like, oh yeah.
Well, no.
You're going to look at it and be like, what is this? So the mindset changes. So the idea of what the Avatar is changes. There are people who probably in the Legend of Korra who think that it's a myth or that it's a joke.
In many ways,
I remember when she was trying to recruit that one dude, whenever people started getting airbending powers again.
Oh yeah.
Trying to recruit that one dude, and he was just like, I don't care.
Oh yeah.
I mean, that's one of the best reflections of that time. Where the guy was just like, I don't care.
But that's what I'm saying.
I just want to stay here and chill and do whatever in my mom's house. I'm not trying to go out and save the world or be some nomad, because this type of, it's kind of in a way, it's new agey to them.
Yeah, definitely. But I don't necessarily think that's the problem that the audience has.
Well, not the audience, but when it comes to how the world is now presented in the Legend of Korra, definitely. I think that's where people feel like, oh, this ain't it. That ain't it.
Yeah, because actually, let me contradict myself. I think the problem that people have with the Legend of Korra is that Legend of Korra is a deconstruction of the series that came before it, and I actually think that's why the creators didn't do a sequel to the Legend of Korra, because you can't deconstruct a deconstruction, because then it just becomes pointless. You establish the mythology of Avatar with the Last Airbender series, then you deconstruct it with the Legend of Korra. But because it's a deconstruction of the thing that's so mythic, some people kind of look at it as like, well, this isn't like what it was before, so I don't know if I like it after only watching like fucking 4 episodes of the thing. You know what I mean? Like, because you know how it's obvious that Legend of Korra is a deconstruction of the Avatar franchise, because they took the Avatar state away from her.
And then when they do give it to her, it's like the Avatar state, when it's used in the Legend of Korra, it's very, I mean, she also fucked up the
reincarnation cycle.
Exactly,
yeah.
But I just feel like all of those things add to, and maybe, I don't know, maybe from a writer's perspective, maybe that's too much to put on somebody, on a character.
Well, no, it adds
to stick her name to somebody who fucked up the Avatar cycle.
Bro, I think the Legend of Korra is the perfect follow-up to Avatar: The Last Airbender, because you can't take this Avatar: The Last Airbender and recreate it.
No,
you can only.
I mean, you can show them older, but if you don't really have a real story to tell, then what's the point? Granted, if you think about it, okay, think about this though, and I love Legend of Korra, but think about this: same villains, but it's just Aang and them grown up
and they'll beat the shit out of all them villains. Aang beats the shit out of Amon. He beats the shit out of season 2 motherfuckers.
Yeah, by the time they're older, there's no real...
He beats the shit out of it. They've mastered who they are as kids.
Yeah.
They've mastered their bending, their swordsmanship, all that shit as children. So there's really no point to see them as adults. That's why I'm not bothered by not seeing them as like teenagers and adults and shit, because there's nothing left for them to learn. And this is a weird comparison. That's why I actually think shit like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles would never work as the adult Mutant Ninja Turtles, because the crux of their story is that they're dealing with immaturity and coming of age with incredible skills and responsibilities. And you know where else that is prominent, but it's mishandled, with Spider-Man. Because people want to keep Spider-Man as a teenager because they think that's the crux of his appeal. They don't realize that the appeal of Spider-Man is that he's an everyman.
Right. Yeah.
Not a teenager, not even a nerd. He outgrows his nerddom pretty early on.
Pretty quickly. That's a big myth. They're like, well,
Yeah.
no, he's supposed to be the down and trodden
No.
nerd. I'm like, this man has his own place. He works a job every single day. This man ain't living with no. This man goes to work. This man pays bills. He has a girlfriend who's by his side constantly.
This is what people.
Fine ass girlfriend. Like, I don't.
This is what people don't understand about Spider-Man, is that a crux of his most popular and memorable stories do not take place with him in high school.
No.
They take place with him either being in college or being a teacher.
Yeah.
The shit with Moreland, he was a biology teacher. Craven's Last Hunt, he was still like an adult photographer. He was like college age photographer. The night Gwen Stacy died, he was in college. The Marriage of Mary Jane, he graduated college. Like most of Peter Parker's significant like trials and tribulations throughout his comic history don't take place in high school. The most significant thing that happens to him in high school, he gets the powers, Uncle Ben dies, oh shit, Electro and Dr. Octopus. Everything else is when he's a young adult. And he's not a nerd at that point anymore.
But I just feel like, yeah, and I think that it's just
the Mandela effect.
Yeah, but it's the same thing when you talk. It's putting a lot on one character to be just this one thing, or to not be these things that kind of make them who they flesh them out, like actually flesh them out.
Yeah.
But then you gotta think about. Sometimes, this isn't a diss, but just because someone watches movies doesn't mean that they know how to write a script or read a script or know what the word cinematography means.
Or understand character.
Or understand character. So, while everyone has a general idea of what Spider-Man is or who he is, everyone's going to just go with like it's the same thing with Deadpool. I mean,
it is, but you know what? I want to stop you right there because I think we should talk about this in another episode.
Yeah, we should. This is like a whole good topic episode for just characters and misunderstandings of them.
I mean, the crux of this is really
our opinions on that, I guess.
The crux of this is really like Korra versus Aang. So you know we'll figure that out. But we should probably shut it down right now. Because they could like we'd be here for like hours.
Yeah, but this is good. This is a good cutoff. This is great.
No, this is good because you know I feel like I've never really, me and you never really like talked in depth about the Avatar franchise.
Oh, there's just so much.
Yeah, it's like, and if there was anybody to talk to about this shit, it'd be you, because you like the only other person that like go all in on the joint the way I go all in on the joint. But yeah, man, we're gonna shut it down. So this is Cytonius, the opposite of Euphonius from Speek, Geek, Unlimited, and with me is
Darius. What's up?
The other half of the path. And yeah, man, we're gonna go ahead. Peace out. Remember to like, share, subscribe. Our videos, our content, our love, our wisdom. We out. Peace.